Okay, I think we will go ahead and get started just because I know there's a lot of information to be presented here. I am Christy Orr. I'm the Director of Disability Resources here on campus. I am moderating a little bit this session, although the presenters will be doing a lot of the moderating themselves. But wanted to let you know that this is part of the Accessibility in Aggieland webinar series. We've been doing this for several years now in conjunction with the Center for Disability and Development, and had a little bit of a break in the fall due to some capacity issues, but we are back. We did do a January webinar, and I'm going to put a link here in just a minute in the chat to the Disability Resources webinar website that has a list of some webinars we've done in the past. And we've also got some webinars that are listed on the Faculty Development website for Faculty Affairs. So I'm going to put those links in the chat, so you'll have access to those if you're interested in seeing some other training related to accessibility and disability. We have also just want to let you know that we are recording this. I know in the email that you got in the announcement, anyone that registered will be able to access this webinar later. We'll send it out through email, but it'll also live on our website. So if there's anybody you think needs to see it, it would benefit them. Once we get it captioned, we'll have it up on our website so that way it will be available. During the presentation, feel free to put questions in the chat and they will probably answer as they go along. Although if it's something they feel like needs to wait till later, I'm sure there will be time for question and answers at the end. But if it's something really relevant to what they're talking about, then they will go ahead and answer it at that point. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Jamie to start. So Jamie, Justin, and Carlos will introduce themselves and they will start the presentation. And thank you all for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having us. So I'm Jamie Thompson, and I am an assistant director at the Center for Teaching Excellence. And Carlos is a part of our team, and we work with digital accessibility as well as generative AI, and then programming for any Canvas-related support. So we wear multiple hats, as probably many of you do as well. Thanks for joining us. Carlos?
And I'm Carlos Perez. I am an educational consultant. As Jamie said, we do a lot of the programming related to digital accessibility and digital teaching and learning.
And I get to be the tag along to this awesome crew of folks here talking about digital accessibility. My name is Justin Romack. I am an assistant director with Disability Resources. One of my roles is to work with assistive technology, students using that technology as an accommodation, and then also just being a consultant to faculty and staff on what those technologies do. So I'm excited to join the conversation today.
Okay, so at the end of this session, you should be able to use your accessibility checkers in Word and PowerPoint to identify and resolve common accessibility issues, as well as we're going to explore some tools that are in Canvas that will help you improve your accessibility of your course content. And then we will evaluate the connections between assistive technologies and content creation. So we have a lot to get through, so let's get going. Okay, so many of you may be familiar with this, but we just wanted to make sure that it was at the forefront so you understood why you're hearing more about accessibility now than maybe you were before. So in April of 2024, the Attorney General signed into rule that there is an adjustment to the final rule. I'm sorry, there is an adjustment to the expectation that there is going to be an accountability for everyone creating content that is accessible to all users, okay? And so that it's not a new rule, it's just an adjustment that it's now there's a compliance piece to that, okay? And so it's not just a university concern, but it is actually an individual content creator concern. And so what that final rule states is that all web content or course content, any forward-facing content must meet the WCAG 2.1 level AA accessibility standards, and we'll go over those in a bit in more detail. But we have until April of 2026 to be in compliance with that. And so the areas of impact include our websites and mobile apps. Course content is going to be a big piece for our faculty. Procurement, so making sure that our vendors that we're contracting with are meeting the guidelines as well. library resources that's got a task on their hand, right, to bring theirs up as well. And then providing accessibility training. So this is our first step in that, right? We're trying to make sure that everyone is aware of what's coming and what is available to you to help assist in either new course content creation or remediation of your already created content.
So we'll
I'm sorry, sorry.
We'll talk a lot more about Texas A&M recommendations related to WCAG. So let's break it down what it stands for. So the law says all content has to be compliant with WCAG 2.2 AA compliance. Texas A&M is going with 2.2, and WCAG stands for Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. 2.2 refers to the version. So currently it's on 2.2 and it is going with 2.2. We want to be up to date with it. We know that WCAG is working on 3.0. It is under draft. So it will be probably very likely by the end of this year be adopted. So, and then when we looked at those AA, what the A stands for, it's the level of conformance level. So when you look at, for example, a 1A, so when we look at a 1A, we are looking at the highest priority. So if you have content that meets the 1A, that means that is highest priority, how it's the easiest to fulfill. However, just meeting with that 1A does not make the content really accessible for all, for most, but not for all. Now, if you are meeting AA, which is what has been established by the law, that really yields that truly equivalent experience for most users. Generally, the content becomes accessible for all users. Now, AAA, that is the diamond standards, okay? This is super, super advanced accessibility criteria, and those sites and materials are rarely comply with AAA. It is super rare to find those websites. So the WCAG principles are divided into big 4 principles that drive these standards, okay? So we're looking at perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust. So those are your 4 principles that truly guide this creation of digital content. So what we have done, a lot of the things that we're going to present to you today are aligned with these standards. We have we've taken the approach of looking at these principles, what do they tell us that we need to do? And we have aligned this with the creation of Word documents, PowerPoints, and all digital content. So we're going to use these 4 principles as we move through the presentation. If you are interested in learning more about it, I am going to put the link in the chat. Put this in here, and it has all details related to WCAG. Oh, that's not it. Okay, Jamie, would you put that in the chat? So those are in there for you. All right, let's keep going. Okay.
Okay, so as Carlos and I have worked through this and done a few trainings, what we have recognized is that there are 2 approaches to what you do. You are either taking a proactive approach, meaning that you are building content that is accessible as you go along, or you're having to remediate the content that you already currently have. And so it's important to understand that if you're creating new content, being proactive will help you reduce the time you spend with remediation. It will help with when you're converting to PDF, that can cause a really pain point there. So that's really important to recognize, okay? It's important to understand that following the guidelines that we're going to give you will help as you create new content, but remediation may need to be done. And so we're going to show you how to do that as well. That's very true. You're right, exactly right. So I was reading the chat, Carlos. I'm sorry. Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly right. And so, and to your point, it leans on the UDL principles, right? Think you're planning ahead, right? We're planning to include all learners, and that's really important, right? We're thinking ahead of that, and then that's less work for you later as you go along. So, I'm sorry.
And that's what we're hoping that we get to. I mean, once you get, at first it looks like it's overwhelming, but then it becomes kind of like a second nature that you start thinking about, well, I need to do this to my document, or I need to add this to my document. So you kind of taking that proactive approach does become a second nature eventually.
Absolutely. So we have two options with accessibility checkers. And so what I mean by that is knowing that your content is accessible, right? And so there are two ways to check that. Now, for many of you, you may have an updated version of the software of Word or PowerPoint, and so your accessibility checker is already running in the background. But for those of you that may not have updated your software, you can either turn it on manually, and Carlos will model this in a moment so that you can see this. You can turn it on manually, and it will, and you can check the accessibility using that, or you can then run it in the background all the time. But the key is knowing if you're seeing in the bottom left corner of your screen, there are two options that you would see, either accessibility good to go or accessibility investigate. And that will help you understand that the content that the checker is checking the content which you're creating. So how do we get to accessibility good to go? How do we get there? That's what we're going to talk about today, giving you the tips that you need to know as you're creating that content.
But first, let's take a look at how do you turn it on, right? How do I know if this is running in the background? How do I know where to find this checker? And one of the things that we want to talk to you about, this process applies for both your Word documents and your PowerPoint. So it would work the same way. So let me go to my screen really quick, and I'm going to move to a Word document right here. Can you all see my Word document? Word document, perfect, thank you. All right, so as you can see, and this is on purpose, y'all, if it's with the newest version of Word document, it is now running automatically. You do not need to turn on anything. So as you can see at the very bottom of my screen, mine is automatically on. What this means is that any content that I add to here, it's going to detect whether it's accessible content or not. Okay, and it works like a spell checker. So think about it as a spell checker. It runs through the content all the time. Now, if for some reason you have one of those older versions of Microsoft, like it works the same for Windows and Mac, yes, the same process. As long as you have the Office products 365, it should work the same way. So if you go at the very top, however, if you have the older versions, you do have to do it manually. So if you go to the very top, you should see this little arrow at the very top. You should see your customized quick access toolbar. When you scroll down, you should see the option called More Commands. So once you click in there, you should see this new screen pop up. And what we are interested in looking at is your accessibility options. So if you click on your accessibility options, what you should see, you're going to see a lot of different options that you can click on. What you do want to make sure that you have clicked is this option right here that says keep accessibility checker running while at work. So if you have an older version, this is how you would turn that on. Once you click on that, you do not need to worry about any of the other options. And then I can click here, okay. And what you are going to see is that now that accessibility checker will be running in the background, okay? Now, alternatively, you can do the manual check. And I'm gonna go to the manual check. And that one, you can access it by going to your review tab. Okay, at the very top. So if you decide maybe I don't want to turn it on right now, or maybe I just want to check manually, you can go right here where it says review. You should see that icon once again that says check accessibility, and it will do the same function. And on the right side, you will have your accessibility checker telling you those things that need to be fixed. All right. Any questions about accessibility checkers? And again, the process is the same for PowerPoint. Okay.
And there's a question in the chat about LaTeX and for math PDFs, and we're going to get to that. We're not covering PDFs today. We're doing Word and PowerPoint, but we'll talk about Canvas, and we'll get to that in just a minute. That's a great question, and it comes up quite a bit. So thank you for that. All right, Carlos, you switching over?
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So how do we get to accessibility good to go? We get there first by thinking of alternative text, right? So the very first thing I want you to consider is your alt text. So when you're inserting images, whether it's in a Word document or PowerPoint, what do we need to do? We need to add alt text, right? Now, just on the slide deck that Carlos has in front of you, right? There are different wiggly, squiggly lines and things like that. There are differences in what requires alt text and what doesn't. And so what you need to know is that when adding alt text to images, it should display, so it's descriptive text that conveys meaning and context of the visual item. So if your item or your image is not conveying meaning, then it's decorative, right? But if you are trying to use it to convey meaning, then you would use the alt text, and we'll show you that in a moment. But it should be concise, 1 to 2 sentences, and we need to avoid using an image of or graphic of or table of, because that it's going to the screen reader will pick up on that. As Carlos mentioned earlier, though, this aligns with the perceivable principle of the WCAG 1.1 standards. Now, here is how, if you were taking that proactive approach to as you added the image, then you would right-click on the image and select the View Alt Text. You're going to see an alt text box, and you have the options, like I said, either to add the description of the image or clicking at the bottom, mark as decorative. Now, we want to encourage you, do not mark an image that you're using to display meaning as decorative. If it has purpose, you want to make sure to include that description there. If it is merely for decorative reasons, then that is acceptable. You can use the button that says generate alt text. You can do that, but what we'd encourage you to do is, if you use that, you must double check it, because it doesn't always get to the meaning of what you're trying to convey. Okay, another area to consider are tables. Now, my background is in education, and I use tables for all kinds of things prior to being privy to understanding the importance of meeting these accessibility guidelines. And so there are some do's and some don'ts for tables. We're going to encourage you to use tables for presenting data, right? We're not organizing certain pieces, but presenting the data in a way that is simple and straightforward. Clear descriptive headings need to be provided. We need to make sure that our header rows and our columns are marked correctly, and we're going to demonstrate this for you. And you want to provide a caption to explain the purpose of the table. And this, of course, aligns with the perceivable principle as well.
And one addition to this really quick before we move on, by making your tables accessible in a Word document, y'all, you are ensuring that most of those features, when you turn into a PDF, those features are going to remain with the table. So the more accessible you make this table in a Word document, the more of those features will transfer to a PDF version.
So some things not to do when creating tables is, do not use your tables for visual purposes, because that sometimes when we do that, we merge cells, or we leave out certain information, and then that causes issues. So you need to avoid merging your cells, not leaving your header cells blank, not using tables within tables, and then making sure that all cells are formatted and there's nothing left blank, whether it's a header or not. And we'll look at a table. Okay. That's a great question. So the no blank cells, because it causes confusion for the reader, because the screen reader doesn't know what to do with it. There's nothing there. It's empty. So you need to fill that. So looking at this table, this example of this table, do you think that this table is meeting accessibility guidelines? Okay, I see no. I see no. No. Okay. Oh, header. No.
No, there you go.
There we go. Look at you guys, already pros.
And Mary, I think this is an example of why you don't leave them empty. This is what we refer with no blank cells.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you're right. So it's missing. It's missing a header. There's something else. You see what else it is? Needs caption. Yep, probably need a caption right now. This is an image, right? So this is not, it's an image of a table. So you're right, but that's exactly right. And it needs the caption. And then there we go, merge cells, you caught it. Monday is a merge cell. Very good job. Very good job. Yeah. So, but how many of us honestly build tables like this, right? It's just kind of a what feels to be visually appealing, but causes some concern or causes issues for our users, and that's not an unintended issue, but we want to be aware of that.
There is a question in the chat. Well, actually, two. Does the first column need to be identified? Two. Yes, preferably yes. The next question, do you have works around for not being merged cells? I do not. I wish I could just tell you here is a quick way, but if you have simple tables, then absolutely I am about to show you how to unmerge those cells. However, if you have very complex tables, that's a different approach. You would have to be creative about structuring the table.
Yeah, so it needs to include the table, right? It needs to include, right? So because I think it depends on what it is you're trying to display, right? So your user should be able to experience that slide the same way every other user is. And if you're using an image, then the screen reader cannot read that as a table. So you would need to insert that table into your slide.
Okay. Okay, we are going to talk about that next. So let's go and jump into the demo part. Okay, so there is this, and again, thank you, Sandra, for adding that. Absolutely. The more you simplify the tables, the easier it becomes to work with those merge cells. Again, it takes a little bit of just changing that mind shift on that. So here's an example of a weird table. As you can see, if I run my accessibility check, your accessibility checker will actually detect those merge cells, okay? So as you can see here, it is detecting that there is a use of merge cells, okay? There's this gigantic just merge cells. So if I click here, and this is why I'm saying that it is easier to fix a more simple table, because I can just do the math and I would be able to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I know I have 5 columns, so I can just click 5 by 1, and that fixes my table. Okay, now I have all those cells ready to go. This is not an easy fix if you have multiple merge cells, because then it just becomes a game of trying to figure out what's the map that I need to do. So at that point in time, my suggestion, if you do have a very complex table, try to think of a different way that you can remake that table. Like, what is a different way to convey the meaning of that table? So for this way, but now I ran into one new problem. What is my new problem? Let's see. Let's see if we were listening to Jamie. What is my new problem? After I split my cells, what's the new problem I created? Yep, Rebecca, thank you. Lindsay, yes, now I have a bunch of empty cells. So what I will do, I know in my lonely cells, thank you.
Exactly.
I have a bunch of those, yeah. So now what I will do, I am going to add something to it. I know it might look visually, I mean, y'all, it might not look the best, but we really want to make sure that we are giving the same experience for everyone. So what I am going to do is just put break all across.
And there's a question in the chat, Carlos, about the merge cells. I would say it's a great question, not a naive question, right? So the question is why the merge cells are inaccessible. They're inaccessible because you've put 2 cells into one and the screen reader can't read it. So it reads it as it's missing information somewhere and it can't identify. So it doesn't recognize that. So you would want to have not to merge the cell to allow the user to have that same experience.
And the last thing we have here, as you can see, there is that empty cell at the very top. And what would be the best heading? I'm going to go with time. Okay, so one last thing that you do want to make sure that you add to your tables, you do want to make sure that your tables, especially, and this applies if you have a cell that's going to span across different pages, you do want to make sure that this option it's turned on. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go highlight the table, okay, and I'm going to right click on the table. What you should see is the option called table properties. So I'm going to click on table properties. I wouldn't mess with any of this. So just fun fact for today. This is the reason why your tables move all over the place. Have y'all seen those tables? They go, woo! They do whatever they want. This is why, because of the wrapping. So if you ever run into that issue, go into the wrapping of those tables, and that will fix it and make those tables a lot manageable. My documents have been destroyed by tables in the past. So now, next thing is, if I go to rows, right here where it says row, you can say that if you want to repeat as header row at the top of each page. What this will do is if this table expands across the page, that header will be repeated over and over again. And if that table continues to be run into the next page, that is what's going to help with that. The next thing that you do want to take care of the table as well is that you want to provide an alt text related to what's the content of that table. And the reason why you want to do that is to provide an overview of what's on the table, okay? You're not describing the content of the table, but you are providing some reference about what's coming up for the user, like what is coming up with this table, what is the table about. So once the user starts getting into the actual table, they have some context about it. And the same rules would apply for this table. You would use the same 1 to 2 sentences describing the table. Questions?
We did, Carlos, we had one question that may be more appropriate later if you're going to talk about alt text, but it was about alt text with a table, if the table is an image. So I don't know if you want to address that now or later.
I can talk about that now. You want to avoid images of a table, especially if you have content in it. Because with the alt text, what you would do, yes, you can describe it, but it doesn't provide the same picture. It won't go through what's in each individual cell. So definitely, I would not recommend an image of a table. I would just put the table onto whatever document you have, just the table.
Yeah, and there's a comment about that she has a table that doesn't have an alt text, but accessibility checker is showing good to go. We'd have to look at that specifically and see there's something that's allowing it to see that.
With tables, that's not an issue, y'all. With tables, you do not have to, we will not check that. For tables, the alt text that's an add-on to your table. Okay, so the accessibility checker checks for images, but for your tables to be more accessible. So this is a greater degree. Remember, we looked at that guidelines 1A, 2A. Adding this alt text will add that extra, but it is not a requirement for the tables. Okay, oh, we have messages coming.
Great questions.
Alt text for tables. Will the screen reader share that information before or after? I am not too sure with that, if it will share the information before or after the alt text for tables.
Justin, do you know the answer to that?
Tell me the question again. I'm not seeing the chat.
So for the table, does it share the information? Does the screen reader read it before or after the table? I think before.
I think it's before, but I'll be honest with you, I see that done so infrequently that I don't know I could say with certainty. And I think Carlos's point about not alt texting a table, alt text may give you a description or a summary of the table, but if you've got a table that's referencing data, an assistive technology user would just use the tabular data, right? And that's why you would make it accessible through some of these practices that Carlos has shared.
Thank you. Okay, that is the graph questions. We can come back to this question later.
I think, I was just going to share real quick what I think Mary has a good point, and she was discussing in the chat about a graph or a table that's in a text question in alt text. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I think her point is really good about really thinking about the questions you're asking. And sometimes the answer maybe it's not a table. Now I know sometimes a table is the best way to do it, but then you need to make it an accessible table. But sometimes when it comes to accessibility, it really is about thinking creatively about, is this the best way to really ask this question or present this information? And maybe there's another way that's more accessible. And sometimes that other way might be easier for a lot more people besides just people with disabilities. It may be that it's more clear to other people too. So I think, I don't know if that's Mary's big point, but I think that was kind of it, is sometimes we can think about, is there another way to do this rather than trying to make something that's really inaccessible accessible? Maybe there's a different way to go about it.
Great point. And it is tricky when it comes to your exams, right? It is, because you have to be cautious of that, because you need to use the image for a question without giving away the answer. So it's great. Okay, so there was a question. Oh, wait, Carlos.
We're moving, or are we got more questions?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were going to say something. I apologize. So fonts and colors. So we've talked about alt text. We've talked about tables. Now your fonts and colors.
Okay. All right. So we're going to talk about, so even fonts we have some good recommendations. We do recommend sans serifs fonts, Arial, Jamie's favorite, Open Sans. All of those are good, accessible fonts. And the reasons why they're accessible is because it improves the readability for all users. Okay, all users with this is highly legible text. Using any of these fonts would help with readability. And again, it helps everyone. Then we talk about the font size. Ideally, we want to use 11 or 12. That's actually the great size font, because if you go anything bigger than that, the zoom option becomes a little bit difficult to manage with the 13, 14 on a document. 11, it's on the smaller side. But if you go anything smaller than 11, then you start running into issues. So one of the things about readable fonts, it is not part of the WCAG guidelines, but it is part of the 508 standards aligned with typography, which is related to text and fonts. Color contrast. This one's huge. This one's super important. So with color contrast, you ensure that the text that you add to a background stands out with the proper contrast. There are some tools such as contrast finders that can help you with color selection for text and backgrounds. But today we do have great news with color contrast. Now your Microsoft 365 products, so what Words and PowerPoint actually have embedded a color contrast checker. And if you have the latest version, it's going to give you suggestions about colors, which is awesome. In the past, you had to use a different tool to go check whether your color contrast is correct. Now, actually, this product is doing it for you. And why is color contrast important? It's because it improves the readability. I think all of us have seen issues where it's very hard to read because of the colors or the background. It's a weird background color combination. And this goes with perceivable, okay? With that perceivable standard that you should be able to perceive content in different ways. So we're gonna look at, oops, why is this acting so weird? Okay, there we go. All right, so here's an example. The moment that you do get an error, as you can see, what's wrong with this? Do you think, is this right or not? Is this correct or is this not? What do we see? No, yep. So you are correct, Fermina. And right away, your checker will go, no, there's a problem here. We need to fix it. So are there any common fonts that should be avoided? Times New Roman, it's all good that you should be avoided. That is a good question. Any font that's not sans serifs, and then there is a long list, and I can share that list with you, will be okay. All right, so here is a color contrast. So this is the newest version of Word document. So the newest version, as you can see now, gives you different options. So with option A, you can use the suggested colors. So Word document or PowerPoint will give you a list. You can use any of these colors to improve the color contrast of your document. Option B, you can go through the list and choose other colors. So if you're not liking the gray or the black color, you can change the color to a different one. Also, it gives you the option of changing the shape field. You can change the background instead of changing the font color. And we'll explore this in a second. Okay, so let's see if I have. Okay, so let's take a look at how this color contrast works. So if I go here, I'm going to use my tables as an example. So if I make this a different color, we're going to go with one of that color. Okay, can you all see it? Right. Okay, so here we go. So right away, you're going to see that that triggers that error. I can see here on the right side, it doesn't like it. But now the nice thing about it is I like it. I like this feature because in the past, Word would just tell you your colors are wrong, but it didn't give you really good options. You would have to manually do the clicking. But this time it gives you right away. You can try any of these colors and you see how it fixes it automatically. I can go back and do that once again. So I can go here, or alternatively, you can go here, and this is another great option that you have now. You can select this option, and what it will do, it's only gonna go through colors that have high contrast. So it filters out all the other colors, and it gives you a list of suggested colors that you should use. So that is a big update that has come up, which is now high contrast only. So if you pick that option, those are going to be safe colors that you can use when you're doing this color contrast. Alternatively, you can see here that I can change the page background. I don't want to do that, but I can go here and select any of these colors. So I'm going to go with green, and you see that message goes away. Any questions?
So I have a quick question. So what kind of disabilities we are focusing here, like dyslexia, colorblindness, sight impaired, or anything beyond? I'm just asking to paying more specific attention to. For example, I teach a class of 287 students. One year it happened that particular year, one student said that do not, she asked me to give just a black and white. Just a black and white. Sorry about that. So just the black and white. They said I cannot, or she cannot follow the color fonts or any colors. She said entire slide should be black and white or gray, so neutral colors. I did not ask her the reason or anything. I don't know. I thought it's not appropriate. I should not ask. So I always created two versions: the regular color version and the neutral color versions.
Okay, I can answer that question, or Jamie. Okay, so with the new law, the new law says that these practices that we're showing you have to apply for all your documents, regardless of disabilities. So all documents have to follow these guidelines.
Oh, all the documents, not just for the disabilities.
Correct. So now all your documents that are outward facing. So if a student can see this file has to meet these standards. Now, if a student has those accommodations, then you would need to create, like you were saying, that example, that black and white version would need to be created, but your original file still has to comply with all these standards.
So is this applicable to only for the students' accessibility or for grant documents or any kind of teaching document or anything that we create in academia?
Yes, any forward facing, anything that you share with students that is either on the web or in the LMS, or that you share with them outside of it. If you have it in a Google Drive that you share, any content that you're sharing, yes.
Wow.
And it's also important to know that you have to have the same version. You don't solve the solution by giving an alternative version. The final rule addresses that. So there are times when you cannot make your document accessible, and when that case occurs, that's when it's okay to create a version that's outside of that. But typically, on a normal expectation, the document that you were sharing must be the same document. We can't give an alternative version. Does that make sense? To meet that, they must meet it.
Okay. So, but you can do this with a PDF, Word, Excel, or any kind of document, right?
Yes, you can make them all accessible. Yes, ma'am.
So what about the Photoshop? For example, we use Photoshop's creating images, for example, microscopic images, immunofluorescence images, immunohistochemistries, histologies. That is staining is a typical thing. For example, if a protein is expressed, it gives a particular staining, and we have to show that color. So because of it is impossible to change the color of what the microscope gives you because that's the data. How will you resolve that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I don't have an answer to that question. I think that may come with the additions to the different tools to help and assist with that, or upgrades to those tools to help you meet accessibility. Because the thing to know is that it's not just you and I that are making our documents accessible, but the vendors have to give us those tools to help make them accessible as well. So we're working towards that. Remember when we talked about the final rule talks about procurement and the vendors that we're using, right? So that's part of that software. So you may work with that individual software company and ask.
Okay,
And
thank you.
I'd also add on to that, much like universal design doesn't necessarily negate the need for accommodations, because there will be specific situations where there's an individualized need that we have to think about. It's
Yeah,
the same thing with creating these types of materials. It would be very hard to know how to advise in that situation without knowing the very specific barrier that would necessitate the accommodation. So in that event, we're going to do our very best to promote accessibility when we create things, when we purchase things, when we publish things. But that doesn't negate the need that sometimes we'll need to look at a specific situation and find an accommodation to address that.
thank you.
You bet.
This helps. Yeah.
Great questions. Thank you so much for asking. So there are specific areas that you have to consider in Word that are unique to Word itself. And so we'll look at those a little closer. One of those are the headings and styles that are within your document. So it's important to know that when creating your documents, you're using the built-in styles for headings. And the headings should be sequential. So you would stay in order, heading 1, heading 2, right? You don't want to skip around. I know sometimes some of the templates that we use and other things, they may skip around. We want to ensure that we're not skipping those heading numbers. This helps with screen readers so that they follow that order as they're reading. And it, of course, it aligns with the perceivable principle. And many of you may be familiar with this. And so as you're organizing your document, you're using the styles and headings and you know that as you're using those, you can adjust those because sometimes the default may not be at an accessible font. So you want to ensure that your default settings for those are.
Okay, guess that's me. All right, so now we're gonna take a look at how do we add those styles. On top of, so y'all, if you use PDF, this also helps with tagging. So a key piece of PDFs, when you convert it to PDF, tagging, you have to tag it. If you've ever worked with a PDF, the very first error that you are going to see is your document is missing tags. The reason why those tags are missing is because the original file does not have those tags. So in order to create those tags, we go here. This is how we do the styling. So not only it's good for the screen readers, but it also helps you whenever you convert these documents into PDF. So the way you would approach this, it's by going here. As you can see, I've already picked my title. So you would just highlight your text and go at the very top and do whatever sequential order you're gonna go. Our suggestion is for this is like the very last step to do because you don't want to go back and forth and with the order. So once your document is finalized and you have an idea of how your document is going to run through, you can start adding all these headings. All right. So that way you're not going back and forth. So as you can see here, I have added that this is the title. For this one, this is going to be my heading 1. So, and you know that if I go here, that you know you have headings when you're able to do this with the document. So the headings really identify where in the document you are, what is happening in the document. The other nice thing about this, and Jamie and I tried this the last time, It also can help with Canvas. So Canvas can actually, if you create an accessible copy of this Word doc, Canvas actually creates alternate formats that are accessible, as long as they have those headings, okay? If you have the headings in the original document like we've done, those tags do go with the file. Okay, let's go back to the slides.
Okay, something that's unique. There are a few things that are unique to PowerPoint that you should be aware of. And one of those is that, or at least, yeah, there we go. Adding title slides to your PowerPoint is important because that helps with the structure of your document. So as it's reading through it, it can identify those, and it's important to know that each slide should have its own unique title. And this is tricky because sometimes we have multiple slides with the same title, and so that can cause cognitive load issues, right? We don't want to do that. So we want to make sure that each one has their own. They're using template slides that include the title will help you from having to go back and remediate and identify your slide title. And we'll show you what we mean that in a minute. And of course, this is part of the 2.4 WCAG guidelines for headings and labels. So when you're creating a new slide deck, now I know some of you may be using the templates that are provided to you through our A&M templates, and you can use those as well. But if you're adding a new slide, we would recommend you add one that has already identified a title slide. But if not, we can show that it can be fixed as well. Go ahead. Or you can also add your title name on the outline view of that as well. Either way, it can be done. Okay. The other piece that's unique to PowerPoint is the slide order, your reading order of your slide. And so the checker will identify this and help you work through this. Now, I will say that if you're using templates maybe from outside, maybe Venngage or Canva, sometimes those have layering with the design, and that can cause some issues with your reading order. So just be aware of that as you're doing that. It may cause a little more remediation to be done. So use the reading order pane and to check the reading order in your objects on your slide. It's very, very important. This helps because the reader reads top to bottom, left to right. And so you have to keep that in mind as you're doing it. So when you check accessibility and the reading order, it will show you a pane, a reading order pane, and you can drag and drop those. Carlos will model that for you in a moment so you can see what that looks like.
And there's a question in the chat, and I'll address this one. This is a complicated question, y'all. It says, I was practicing, Canvas told me that PDFs created from Office 365 do not have tags. Is this true? It is complicated because you have to go back to the original source. What I mean by this is if you created a PDF from a Word document that was not accessible, that PDF will not have tags. That PDF will not be accessible. Now, if you follow the steps of adding headings, adding alt text, and then this goes to the next question, I've generally been told to avoid PDFs. Yes, the reason why we usually not encouraging PDFs is because you do have to create an original Word document. If you just convert a Word document without any remediation, you turn it into a PDF, that PDF is inaccessible, okay? That PDF does not have tags, that PDF does not have anything in it. So that's what I was saying with this question is complicated for that same reason, okay? So you would have to always go back to the original source. So what is the source of this PDF file? Because yes, a PDF can be inaccessible right away if the original file was not remediated. That is just automatically, almost, if it's not being remediated. I hope that answers the question. Okay.
I just want to make sure that I understood your point. So if I create a PDF out of my PowerPoint and share with the students, if there's something is not accessible and you are saying that I cannot correct that in PDF, I need to go back to the PowerPoint and correct it and then reconvert it to PDF, right?
That is correct. Because, I mean, if you do the remediation of PDF, it's going to take you a long time. So it takes a long time. So yeah, so if you go to the original file, remediate it, it's going to help. It's going to help to the PDF. And now, let me disclaimer really quick. Also, most of the time, that file will convert to an accessible PDF, but there's going to be some minor fixes that may need to happen as well. So we shouldn't assume that it's 100% accessible with the PDF. What about PDFs?
We have to do slide by slide. Every slide can we do, for example, if I have 80 slides, can we do this accessibility changes with all of them default together combined? Should I go to every individual detail?
So when you're using that accessibility checker, it will take you, it categorizes it, and he'll show you that in a moment, and it categorizes it. And so you'll fix all your alt text, and then you'll fix all of your reading order, and it has it categorized for you. It will walk you through that. So
Okay.
sometimes, like if you have, for example, on the screen, you can see the Center for Teaching Excellence logo. So if when Carlos, when we built these slides, when he built these slides, he tagged that one time. He put that alt text there and it remembered it. But sometimes it doesn't. So you just, if it flags it in your checker, you want to address it. And that, I think that is the easiest way for you to go through that accessibility check, is to follow that guideline. And he'll show you that in a moment when he pulls his PowerPoint up.
Which is now. There we go. Let's go. All right. So here is a document, y'all. I am going to go to a slide. So here's my slideshow. As you can see, like I said before, that accessibility checker is running in the background. So I can go here, and right away there are issues on my right side. So there are missing alt text. So there is the alt text missing. So I can go here, and I can say this is a red. Okay. So I'm going to save it. This is the center. All right. So I'm going to save this one. Now logos are an interesting thing. So I'm going to go to the next one. So now you can see that now this is specific to PowerPoint. Again, if you are a user of PDF, again, this applies to the tagging. Okay, so if you add a title slide, number one, it helps with the structure of the document. So if the student's using a screen reader, this helps with the structuring of the slides. If you go convert it to PDF, it helps with the tagging. So what I am going to add here as a title, you want to be descriptive with the title as well. Let me find my mouse. Where we go? Come on. Yeah, can you see my mouse? For some reason it disappeared. Okay, oh, here we go. Okay, so I'm going to call this alternative text. And you can see that message now, it's gone. That message has disappeared, and now it's updating. Okay, it's updating results. I need to come back to this slide. It is not cooperating.
Or is it giving you trouble? I know I had trouble in Zoom yesterday.
Fixed. Okay, it is fixed. Okay, so now we got one more error to fix, which is a reading order. If this, it's not, I can see it on this. Oh, there we go. It's back. Okay, so here's a checked reading order. I'm going to verify my order. You can see that this is where you have, this is the one that you do have to go slide by slide. There's really not an easy fix for the reading order. You do have to go slide by slide. You have to check the order of each one. So if I go here, you can see that it gives me picture. We don't want that. Again, it's going to read top to bottom, left to right. So in this case, what I want to aim to be number one should be my alt text, my title. Your title should always go first. So if I can get it to show up. You see it? It's just not even showing. You see that? Okay.
It's hung up?
It's just disappeared. It just
disappeared. Goodness. You may have to close that and start back up. But and this is, Carlos makes a good point. So you only have to fix the slides that are flagged, right? So your slides that are flagged, it will tell you in that pane that he showed you there on the right of his screen. it will flag the ones that need reading order addressed. So it potentially could be every slide, or some of those slides may already have the correct reading order. You're gonna try there.
Oh, let's try again. Oh, it's back. Okay, so
There we
see,
go.
now I'm gonna go here and I'm gonna bring this back up. So alternative text should be first. Red Apple, Center for Teaching. So now the next one should be this one. I'm gonna move here. Again, we're going top to bottom, left to right. So now I finished all my left side, so now I can go to the next side. And then this one is just a logo. So that, you can see now it is fixed. So my reading order message is gone.
And there's a question in the chat. What will cause it to flag the reading order as not accessible if you don't have the proper order for which the screen reader would read it, top to bottom, left to right? And that's why he was reorganizing those the objects or the different pieces in that slide so that he has the Carlos, will you show that again? Can you show your reading order?
I can add something else on that.
Mm-hmm.
What messes up the reading order mainly is going to happen, like, for example, you've created this slide, but you remember that you needed to add something later on. And then you add that picture at the very last minute. That is going to throw off the reading order, because it's not, the way that they have structured reading order is not very smart. It is in the order that you add things, not in the order that they're going to appear to the audience. So if you, it is based on the way you add things, not in the way that it's visually appealing. So for example, I could have added alternative text last, or I could have added one of these things last, and that threw off the order, the reading order.
Because it has to do with the placement on the slide. Exactly. That's it. Yeah, exactly. So if you go back to your reading order and show that, can you go back there to the for this specific slide? And then you can see if it were out of order, like it was a moment ago, then that's when it would flag it. Right now, his slides are in order, so there are no others to address. Great questions.
2, I use most up to date. Okay. Okay, Mary. Thank you. Thank you for checking on that with the Mac. Okay. All right. Oh, my piece. All right, Canvas. We are going to run through Canvas really fast. So a lot of the Canvas piece, you all have seen these images. Okay, how many of you have seen these images? Once you have changed your reading order, how do you tell the system is what you want? The top to bottom, left to right. That is, Kevin, that's how the system will read it. I know it's not, sometimes it's not the best solution, but if you want the error to go away, it should be top to bottom, left to right. And once you put it in that order, no?
Carlos, what I'm saying is that when it tells me to check the order, I check the order and I make sure I've got it the way I want it. It still tells me to check the order. There's no way to say, okay, I've checked. There's no click box to say, I've checked that order.
So if the reading order, okay, so let me see if I can understand it. If the reading order is not the right way, like the way the system wants it, the error will not go away.
Well, that doesn't help if I'm the instructor and I want it that way.
Again, yeah, I understand it. This is a frustrating part with the checker. With the frustrating part, that's what it is. Because for example, if I wanted to change this around, or if I want to say, are you seeing my screen?
I see your screen.
So if I don't put it in the order the system needs it to read it, the message is not going to go away. You see that?
Yeah, again, I said, and I do, and I appreciate all you guys are doing. I would just say that at some point, be sure that you create instructions, like PDF handouts for all of us, accessible, of course, but do it native Mac. Don't do it on a PC and assume that the Mac controls are exactly the same, because they're not.
You're right that the controls from different Office products, version to version, platform to platform, are not in parity. You're totally right about that. Carlos, remind me if with the accessibility checker in PowerPoint, is it showing both errors and warnings?
It does show you the error and then the warning.
So is reading order a warning, or is it displayed as an error?
It's an error. It's going to display it. And it's not, and that's the thing with the reading order, it's not going to go away until it gets the order that the system has to check.
Because you're right about position on the slide itself, but then it's also about the semantics of what the information is. So, you know, it's going to consider that a title on the slide semantically should be ahead of the content. So there's some nuance to that too. I want to do a little bit more digging on how to make that go away, because I think the question makes a lot of sense, right? Like, you as the author of the content know what order that should be presented in. And, you know, could this be a false positive? And if so, what do we do with false positives?
Yeah, and again, and with the reading order, absolutely. And and I hope that they update their product in the future so that we have more control over that reading order.
And I will say that speaking back to if you're using a template from some other place, Canva or Venngage or somewhere else, sometimes it makes it very difficult because of the layering also. So you're right, and so that it makes it look like you need it to be in a certain order, and you know, like just like he spoke, that this order is the way I need it to read it for to make the context make sense, but it will not fix that. So you have to do you have to be a little creative when you're doing it, right?
Well, and don't quote Justin Romack on this. I would just say that false positives concern me a little bit, because if we're trying to flex accessibility tools to clear errors, but then we lose sight of clearly conveying content meaning, then we're doing a disservice to disabled people. And so I do have concerns about the way Microsoft handles this particular error, because I do think it does a disservice to the reader if we're manipulating the content in an order that it wasn't intended to be received. I'll do some digging. I've never seen this before and haven't really given much thought to it, but you definitely are going to get me digging on the answer to that. Hopefully in a follow-up email as we share out the recording, maybe I can have an answer on that.
Share with all of us. We need control over that reading order. Okay. So now let's talk about Canvas. So Canvas, we want you to think of Canvas as your last check for accessibility. It is good. So the first one, so there's two options that you can go about Canvas. So the very first one is your accessibility checker, which is the built-in feature. This one runs if you create content within Canvas, this is running at all times. And you all probably have seen it. It is this icon at the very bottom. Whenever you are in the rich content editor, that's the icon that runs at all times. So if you look over here, so again, this only verifies content that's created within the rich content editor in Canvas, and it's running at all times. It's right here, okay? So when you have it, when you create content, if there's no issues, you should be able to see an accessibility checkers with balloons celebrating you for doing a good job with accessibility. Now, if you run into issues, as you can see in this one, it will not like it. And again, this is color contrast issues. It will flag it, and it will give you options. So the nice thing with this one as well is, at the moment you find the right color, the error will go away. Very similar to how I showed you earlier with Microsoft Word. The other example that it will flag is your alt text. So if an image in Canvas does not have the alt text, it will flag it, okay? Now, some other errors that will be detected. Again, this is a built-in feature in Canvas, so any content you create in Canvas, these are all the issues. I will not read them through all, but we will share the slides. But again, it is those big issues: color contrast, images, table captions, all of those Canvas built-in checker will look for. Now, the ally report, this is your final step after you have created content, after you have done all the good things to the documents and you are ready to publish. The ally report, it's a final check for accessibility. Now, this one's not perfect. It is a good tool. However, it's not perfect, okay? We always recommend for you to go to the original source. So let's take a look at what it looks like for. So when you are running that ally report, again, it looks for those missing alt text, contrast issues. If your document does not have a language set, it will flag it. And if it is not tagged, again, it always goes back to that tag. So the ally report, again, it runs through the entire course, and it will provide you with a score for your course. And it will give you some guidelines for remediation. You cannot remediate within it except images, but it gives you guidance. So You find it by going on your left side on your course. You should be able to see the word accessibility report. This is only viewed by you, the instructor. Students do not have access to an accessibility report. Only you are able to see this. And if you cannot see it, you do turn it on through the navigation. So I can. That is. Jamie, you want to say something? So I am in the practice course right here. So you see on the left side, you should, if you don't have it on, you would go under settings, navigation. Then you would find that this one, I have it on, but if you wouldn't, you would just click right here, enable the accessibility report. Once you click that and you click save, then you should be able to see that accessibility report on the left side. When you click on it, it will run through it and it will give you that score. And it will give you some guidance to do. Again, Ally is not perfect. It is far from perfect, but it gives you good guidance to go through. So I'm going to show you what it does. So if you look at the Ally report, it would look like this. It goes through the entire course. It will find some of the lowest scoring content, how many images you have, PDFs, and it gives you some guidance. So if I go here, so this is an example. For images, here is important for images. You can add alt text to your images within Ally. However, those alt text will not transfer when you copy from one course to the next course. Those alt text will stay within that Canvas course. So you can do that. So you can remediate that if you add any images within your course. Now, here is where it goes a little, where it's not very helpful for documents. It will flag it. It will let you know that your document is not accessible. However, it does not allow you to remediate. Ally gives you guidance. Ally does a really good job at finding the errors. However, it is not a good job at giving you solutions, okay? So you would have to go back to the original file and find it and do all the remediations of the original file, re-upload, and then you should see that score change. Now, there is some guidance that help you, but there is a question. I uploaded a syllabus on Canvas Green Apple, but when I look at the score, it tells me why my score is only 89. Okay, that is an interesting question. Do all documents, Jamie, need to be 100%?
Yeah, I responded. Did you see it? So,
Okay.
so that is a great question. I was trying not to interrupt you, Carlos. I'm sorry. So, first thing, Carlos makes a great point about Ally. So it can allow you to make some updates to your course, but those don't transfer, meaning the alt text for your images. It can fix it in the moment, but it doesn't fix those documents. So he's correct in that you have to remediate those. Then to Kevin's question, Kevin, if you want to schedule a time to meet with us about some of these specific issues, we can absolutely look at those to tell, because there's probably some things going on there. We would need to see that in the background. But the question for 100%. So this is, I know 100% makes everybody like squirm in their skin, right? But the final rule does not give a percent, but what it says is all documents must meet accessibility guidelines. And so that's what the system has, the system itself has said we're going to follow 2.2, right, to make sure we're covering a larger base, because 3.0 guidelines are coming. So we're trying to get there. But so we're shooting for 100%. Yes, that's what we're shooting for.
There is one more question before it's a long explanation. How about PDFs downloaded from online journals? Sally, that is a really good question. Most journals are doing a really good job now of keeping up with tagging PDFs. I was looking at some documents for an instructor, very older versions of an article. If you go back to the original journal, they're actually tagging these files now. They're actually tagging a lot of these articles. So if you do have an older version of a journal article, my suggestion is to go back to that original journal and download the newest version. And probably that newest version will have tags already. Okay. Justin, you're it.
Tag, it's me. It's me. Let me fire up some things that we can walk through. So I appreciate Carlos and Jamie talking through just the technical processes for making things accessible. And I know this can feel like you're drinking from a fire hose. Please understand that, I've worked in accessibility and with disability for over, 15, 20 years. And there are things that I learn new all the time. We're in this together. Okay. My part of this presentation is really to say, listen, we've done all the technical things. We've clicked all the boxes. We've added all the descriptions. We've provided all the metadata to say this thing is accessible. What does that look like for the human being on the other side of the interaction? Because you may or may not know it, but I am totally blind. And so this personally affects me. It affected me as an undergraduate student. It affects me now continuing into my graduate studies. I was really resonating with Carlos when he talked about journal articles, and they are coming a long way. I love seeing HTML versions of journal articles because websites are just a very nice experience to move around versus PDF or downloadable documents. But we're coming a long way. We've got a long way to go, but we're coming a long way. My goal is to show you what some of the assistive technologies look like. And honestly, my goal with how I present this information is to share with you things that you can use right here, right now, to get that experience. Because it doesn't matter if we check down the list. I think that the hardest part of accessibility is knowing what it actually looks like on the other side. So I'm going to talk about 3 categories of assistive technology. I'm going to talk about screen readers. I'm going to talk about voice to text or speech to text. And I'm going to talk about text to speech. And I'm going to do it all in like 15 minutes. All right. So I do want to share a video with you. I find that Apple's accessibility videos do a really, really good job of both showcasing the technology and kind of capturing some of the narrative about what the disabled experience is with technology. So I'm going to share my screen real quick. And I'm going to share with you, Patrick.
This is
We don't have any sound, Justin.
Well, that's not helpful. Hold on. Let's try that again. I'm glad you said something. You have that moment when you're broadcasting something on Zoom and you're like, is that translating for everybody else?
Oh, that was me with my PowerPoint. I couldn't find the mouse.
Well, I was thinking maybe it was like part of the thing, like it was like coming in and out. So that's why I was like giving it a second.
No, the reason yeah. Okay, so here we go. Let's try that again, friends.
This is the station to rock you, shock you, move you, and groove you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. My name is Patrick Lafayette. Don't you ever forget, it's Chris Mix Radio. Patrick with you. To do something for yourself.
Voiceover on Logic Pro X
is one of the greatest things you could ever do.
Record. Menu 10 items. Count in. Submenu. Metronome setting. Check mark. Allow quick punch and check mark.
Now, I can express myself.
Camera. Picture 2 in progress.
There you go.
Picture 1 is citrus printed plastic bottle.
It's a big thing when you're a father and you want to participate.
Picture 3 is garlic powder. Picture 3 is person holding white onions.
Oh. What's up, babe? Not just make food, but make excellent food. Where I see my wife take her shoes off and say, "Give me some more." And my kids lick their chops. I said, "Daddy, that was great." I have so much that I've always wanted to express. I'm like a volcano. I'm like Pele or Mount Etna.
On the track for recording.
I'm about ready to erupt.
So I like this video because not only does it capture what the blind experience is like, but it also shows you how assistive technology works. And, you know, I don't know if you noticed, but Patrick was recording music. He was using a pretty advanced piece of digital audio recording software. And I think a lot of times when we think assistive technology, we think of sort of watering down experiences. And that's just not the case, right? Technology provides access in really deep and meaningful ways. And so what I wanted to do is let me stop my share here. And I'm going to come over here to a PDF real quick. Bear with me. So I created a little simple PDF that we could kind of talk through. And I created this in Word. So all of the tagging, the structure that I provided over in Word, hopefully will translate. And I just want to show you what this experience looks like for somebody who is navigating non-visually. So I'm gonna let it read a little bit at the speed I typically read at, because everybody's always interested in that. And then I'll slow it down a little bit.
Heading level 1, this is my heading 1. Blank. I am adding some text here to break up my headings and demonstrate how a screen reader might read text and structure in your documents. Blank. List with 3 items bullet. You will usually start with heading level 1. Bullet. Your first subheading will be a heading level 2.
Okay. So
Voice
a little bit
English.
there. Let me slow it down and let you hear what that actually sounds.
Rate 75, pitch 50, rate 7, rate 70, rate 6, rate 6, rate 55. Out of list heading level 1, this is my heading 1.
So you notice that the screen reader said heading level 1, and then it read the text of the heading level, right? So I know that's the most important thing on this page.
Blank. I am adding some text here to break up my headings and demonstrate how a screen reader might read text and structure in your documents.
So I asked it to read the next paragraph, and it did. So here we're going to keep going down.
Blank. List with 3 items bullet.
List with 3 items bullet. So I know that there is a list. I know that there are 3 items.
You will usually start with a heading level 1. Bullet. Your first subheading will be a heading level 2. Bullet. If you decide to add additional layers of content, you can increase the heading level as you have more subdivision in your content. Out of list blank.
Then it tells me I'm out of my list.
Heading level 2, this is my second heading.
We now see a second level of headings here. This is a subsection.
Blank. I will add a table below to demonstrate how this is read. Blank.
I want to show you this table real quick.
Table with.
I created this while Carlos was talking. I wanted to test the alt text. And you know what? The alt text doesn't actually come over with a table because alt text isn't really an appropriate addition to a table. I don't know why Office hasn't caught up with that, but I put alt text on this table and it doesn't even read it with the assistive technology. So I don't know what's going on there. But I have this table and I want you to listen to what it says.
Out of table blank. Table with 5 rows and 4 columns. Row 1 column.
5 rows and 4 columns. So as a non-visual reader, I now sort of have a spatial layout of this table. And so as we talk about merge cells, here's why that's important. This table is communicated 5 rows, 4 columns. But if you start merging cells, then you change what that orientation is, right? And so then that introduces all sorts of unpredictable navigation. Here, I know that these cells are not merged. I know that I can predictably move left to right, down 5 rows, over 4 columns, and I'll show you what that looks like.
Column 2, group 2. Column 3, group 3. Column 4, group 4. Row 2, group 1, column 1, James.
You'll see that it's saying the column and the row coordinate as I'm navigating the table.
Group 2, column 2, Johnny. Maddie, row 3, Mickey.
So we use tables for tabular data, not layout. And that's why we do that, because the screen reader is going to report these coordinates as it's navigating the table. Think of how redundant that would be if you didn't need to know that spatial orientation. It would just be overwhelming.
Group 3.
So that's a pretty simple demonstration of a screen reader. I could talk for hours and hours and hours about what that looks like. We should maybe do a presentation on that. That'd be fun. But let me show you speech to text.
Screen sharing meeting.
So of course, I've got to get back over here.
Rate 75. Select tab control documents tab. Entire screen sharing up. Design from Apple.
Let me come back over to our YouTube video. I'm going to bring up
screen sharing meeting control. PowerPoint slideshow. Feb 19 accessibility and slideshow. Slide 62. Add for blind device. Add for blind device students.
Just a
Media Google version with HTTPS. Copy.
Here we go.
Design for Patrick L. Apple. Collapsed. Apple voice control.
Wake up.
The dictation microphone icon.
You know,
select
every time I see
HTTPS.
every time I see that video,
Screen sharing meeting control.
it's a little dizzying how quick Ian's moving through that information. And I show you this video again because these are tools that are built into your iPhone. Voice over the screen reader, you can turn that on, you can test your content, you can see what that experience is like. Same thing with voice control and dictation on your iPhone, iOS device, Mac devices. And they have similar technologies built into Windows as well, right? And so the important thing to take away about speech to text, voice control, is it's not just about talking to your document, right? It's about controlling the mouse and controlling the interaction. And it requires thoughtful design about how we put together our platforms. When you see that advice to use descriptive link text to avoid things like click here, learn more, things like that, the reason we do that is because when you have to control the interaction with your voice and you say, click here, which click here are we talking about, right? So it's very important that we provide descriptive link text so that technologies like this can appropriately use it. We have lots of students that will use speech to text when handwriting or typing out ideas can be difficult. Sometimes they can talk out ideas better than they can type out ideas. And this technology is very easy to access now. So I wanted to share that with you. And then finally, I wanted to share some text to speech. So I'm going to go ahead and get back into. So I've introduced you to Patrick and Ian, which were Apple videos, and Apple sadly doesn't have a video for text to speech. We use a tool called Read and Write that's freely available to faculty, staff, and student. And I just wanted to show you this. Read and Write actually just released some new voices. And this is actually a very common technology that our students use. And I'll explain why that's important to you in a second. So let me to Bill. So I have a Google Doc here. And Bill's just going to say hello.
Howdy. My name is Bill, and I am one of the AI-enhanced voices available in Read and Write for Google Chrome and Microsoft Edge. Read and Write is a flexible set of literacy tools which provide text-to-speech, dictation, and writing support, and study tools to make learning accessible to all students. I wanted to spend just a moment with you to demonstrate how powerful my text-to-speech support can be to any learner, especially those who may have challenges with reading processing, comprehension, and focus while engaging with course materials.
And I won't have him finish reading. The big thing that I wanted to show you is that, number one, it's a freely available tool. You can go download this right now. There's a link in the presentation, and happy to share it with you. You just simply use your Tamu Google account. You can access this. I love this tool for checking content. I think it is a fantastic representation of how something is going to read. It gives you a good idea. I can use this anywhere on the web. So if I wanted to come over here to Canvas, I'll just get in a demo class here real quick.
Courses grade button, courses list with 2 items, all courses link. List with 3 items, disability resources review community. Disability alerts, clickable, global clickable, disability resources review community, course heading level.
I'll just select a little bit of text.
Canvas LMS document focus red. Video player for Pixel, share laptop.mp4 frame, click disability app available. Add this page to save as a one password, has access to Wave, has access to the site, Read and Write for Microsoft Edge.
I'll click my Read and Write icon in the toolbar.
Disability resources review community, out of frame, clickable. Prediction button, covers dictionary button, picture dictionary button.
I selected some
play
text.
Button, pause button, play button.
I'll click play.
Disability Resources Review Community Course.
Pause button,
Texas AA.
And you'll see that it's highlighting both the word and the sentence. So a lot of times students will have difficulty tracking, processing. This is just going to really help you hone in, lock into the text. It's multimodal, so good UDL, Universal Design Principles, right here in action. And again, freely available. We've got about 350 to 450 students, give or take, each semester that have this software installed on their computers. And so it's really important that when we're thinking about document accessibility, this is what the translation of that looks like.
Screen sharing meeting controls.
So again, just kind of rushing through this, but wanted y'all to see some of that in action. Happy to talk more about that in detail if you ever have questions. So I'm going to hand it back to you, Carlos.
Okay, so let's go here.
I have a question. Is that okay to ask now?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know if you are aware of a condition called EDS, Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. It is coming more and more prevalent these days. I have ended up having students in my class. They have hypermobility. Basically, it is a collagen mutation. So they have severe constant pain. So yeah, what a 90-year-old elderly person will feel the pain and inflammation that could be felt by these patients when they are in 20s, 90s. So this is a very painful and it's an invisible disability. You can see that student was accused by a faculty for parking in the disability parking, and because she was the other person complained that she is cheating. Actually, she is an EDS patient. She is on drug and tablets, medications, even for her cardiovascular function. So okay, so these kids cannot. Their digits are very painful and hypermobile. They cannot write, so they have to speak and transcribe that into text. How we can help them in the classroom settings and outside the classroom setting?
Yeah, for sure. And so part of that is being aware of the tools that they're going to be engaging with in the class. Are those tools accessible to assistive technology? And when we purchase, when we vet, when we get those things implemented in the classroom, we need to know what are known accessibility issues. Have those been addressed? Are there going to be challenges for students with assistive technology? And then we need to do something about that. Secondly, to that, they're going to need some coaching on what this technology can do. Sometimes it's a formal accommodation because they're using it quite extensively. Sometimes it's that they use it occasionally and we don't necessarily have it as a formalized accommodation. But in any event, they can work with our office to talk about what assistive technology could look like in their workflow as a student.
So who is the contact person, Jamie?
I would be the contact person.
Mr. Justin. Okay,
yes,
thank you.
Yep, for sure. One thing that I like to encourage with students is it's not enough to know that a tool exists. We have to have a strategy built around that tool. It's probably my favorite part, right? Like sharing the tools, I can do that all day long. That's fun. You can go Google and find that. But showing you how to practically use the tool, that's where the magic is. And I really enjoy meeting with students to talk about that.
Can you chat your email ID here, please?
Yeah, for sure. I'll drop that in the chat.
Thank you, sir. Most of the time we are lost because we don't know where to go, who to approach. Thank you so much. It's very useful.
When I think that's a good reminder. Anytime you feel lost, anytime you feel like there's just got to be an answer to this question, that is what our office does. That is what CTE is about. We are here to be a resource. There's no expectation that you walk away knowing everything about everything on accessibility, right? I don't know everything about everything on accessibility. That's why I'm glad I have partners and colleagues in this office. If something doesn't feel right, or you know there's got to be a solution, or you just want to be a resource to a student, reach out and we can collaborate on what that looks like.
Oh, awesome. Thank you so much. It's truly an eye-opening for me.
Yes, so this is our website. So we do have a lot of resources in there. And if you go to this website, we also have our coming up workshops that we will be offering as well. Jamie, anything else you want to add?
Yeah, so I dropped the link to the website in the chat, and then I'm going to drop the information for the workshops that are upcoming that you can see there on your screen now. I apologize because it probably does not copy exactly correct in the chat for some weird reason. It does some weird stuff, so I apologize. But please visit those links, and you should be able to access to register for those upcoming workshops. If I will say that I know Christy put in the chat earlier, there is a university committee that are working group that is working to help resolve some of these issues. And I will say that there are some tools that are coming that will help with some of the remediation process and make things a little bit easier. They will work within the LMS, but you can also access some of the tools outside of the LMS in the event that it's not something that you're putting in the LMS. And more information will come. The first tool should be available hopefully in May for faculty to begin and staff to begin remediating documents. So that will alleviate some of these questions and help. It does a pretty good job of PDF remediation, and it helps address some of the concerns related to math and science that you have. So it does a really good job. They've really focused on that. So I think that will be a great tool. We're also getting a couple of other tools that will help with captioning, because one tool for help with captioning and something for something else, but captioning is going to be a needed thing. And right now, we don't have access to something that you don't have to pay for. And so this tool should be available in the fall, and that will help with your captioning needs within the LMS.
Well, thank you all so much. I know we're a minute over. They obviously have tons of important information to share, and Jamie, Justin, and Carlos are just great resources for us to have here on this campus. There are a lot of trainings available, and I know sometimes that can be overwhelming. I think Justin will be sending out an email that has these resources listed, and you're also welcome to contact any of us if you need some help with the resources. I do want to encourage you to just jump in and start trying these things. I will tell myself that I used to say I have people that know this, so I am not a technology person. And then I realized I needed to learn. So I will make documents accessible even when I know no one who is going to read them needs them to be accessible. I still just do it as a matter of practice. So I'd encourage all of you to just start doing it. You know, start with your PowerPoint presentations. I do it all the time. I check for accessibility. No one needs it to be accessible sometimes, but I'm learning. And so just encourage you all to jump in and do it. Contact us if you have questions, and please do the survey. I dropped it several times in the chat, but we appreciate all of you being here, and just appreciate Justin, Carlos, and Jamie for presenting for us. Thank you so much.
So very
Thank
quick
you all.
question.